Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to Sun Up on 7. It's a pleasure having this first conversation with you. So, joining us via Zoom, we have the authors of Living Faith in the Heartland. And basically, I really enjoyed this book, and I really hope that you do as well if you can get hold of it. So, basically, for all my Belmopan folks, everybody that wants to get a dive into Belizean history, this is a conversation that you do not want to miss. So we're talking with the authors of this book, Mr. Norris Hall and Miss Sandra Hall, a very, very cute couple who did a fantastic job on this book. They're joining us via Zoom to give us an insight into how was the process behind getting this compilation together, and of course, how you can have access to it. So, Ms. Norris, Mr. Norris, and Miss Sandra, good morning to you both. How are you doing this Friday?
Good morning, Kevin.
Hi, Kevin. Good morning. We're fine. Up early, but we're fine. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for being up with us and accepting our invitation to talk about this book. Like I said, I absolutely enjoy it. I did. So my first question is, so this is a joint collaboration between both of you. And on the book you shared the challenges of compiling the research and that kind of thing. But I'm curious, is how did the two minds come together? Because maybe you have different writing styles and that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
How did you come together and come up with this amazing piece?
Kevin, well, we've been married for a long time, so it's like we operate almost as one. But Norris is a really prolific writer. He's a journalist by profession. But throughout the years, I have edited most of his writings.
Oh.
So I know how he writes, and he knows how I edit.
Okay.
So we did interviews together, and Norris is not a Catholic. I am a lifelong Catholic. So when in interviewing, we knew what areas I was supposed to ask questions, and he was. So, but we work together very, very closely. So it's like we know each other, what we are thinking, how we are thinking. So it wasn't that difficult. It wasn't a difficult process.
Beautiful.
It was a dynamic, compliment. Like, he knows how, I know how he writes, he knows how I edit. We get it. We know each other because, the two become one when you get married. So definitely this is the perfect play of that. I want to piggyback off Kevin's question and just ask, I know we talked about the difficulties and just, the writing style, but for you as a couple, for people that are in Belmopan or so, they're hearing about this book, can you tell us why you thought it was an important need to be able to write about, how all of this thing, how Belmopan the history of Belmopan and how it fit together?
Well, the original idea was not ours, actually. We were approached late in 2019 by the church's parish council.
Okay.
To put together a history of the work of the church in Belmopan. We jumped at it. We were enthusiastic about it, having been pioneers in Belmopan. And we agreed. We got started in putting the book together, going to the National Archives, spending a lot of time there, doing research, and starting to interview the residents of Belmopan about their experience as pioneers, mainly parishioners. So I would rather say that this book is not a work of Norris and Sandra Hall, but really it is the work of the community. We were really the captains in the ship steering the story. While it has been described as a history book, it is not a hardcore, boring textbook about the history of Belmopan.
No, it has pictures.
It's a beautiful story of the people of Belmopan.
It is really a story about Belmopan that is written more in prose than like a textbook. It is a easy read.
Yeah.
And in thinking about it, one of the main elements of the book or the preludes were the fact that there was a hurricane, a weather system that came off the west coast of Africa and piggyback on the tropical Atlantic jet stream and entered the Caribbean and came to Belize in the name of Hurricane Hattie. That devastated Belize City, as you know, as well as the southern tongue of what was then Tan Creek Town. At the same time, Belize was sitting on the edge of a powder keg with 30 years of civil war in Guatemala and rumblings at the time in 79, 78, 79 of civil wars in Central America. And the third element of the book was the fact that the nationalist movement and the independence movement had begun in earnest. Mm-hmm. And the government at the time was determined that the struggle towards independence was not to be derailed. So these are the three major elements in the book.
Right. So as you rightly mentioned, Mr. Norris, like the book itself is an easy read. I mean, it's about 100 pages long, so you can easily read it in a day or two, and I absolutely love it. You know, I love Belmopan. I lived there for 8-9 years. So being able
come back, Kevin, come back.
Yes, well, I will. I'm always there, you know, but being able to like, for instance, like you mentioned, like some very like cool things about Belmopan in the book, like Tucan Avenue being one of like the first busiest streets of Belmopan, and I lived in Tucan Avenue, and I'm like, oh my God, I lived on this street, right? So that was like
the Yellow Bird restaurant.
Yes,
Kevin,
yes.
The
I was
Yellow
like,
Bird restaurant.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, and that was like your first meal that you had in Belmopan as well. So like, I was like, oh my gosh, it's like it's so cool, you know, talking about the pioneers.
We went to this restaurant. It had two tables.
Yeah.
We sat down, and then we were served rice and beans and stewed chicken and plantains. And we said to the waitress,
we didn't order.
Well, we didn't order this. You know? And she said, well, this is all we have. I assume it came for lunch.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
But
and Kevin, you know, people who don't live in Belmopan don't understand the deep appreciation people who live in Belmopan have for Belmopan, because the pioneers, especially people like us who came from the 70s, we were here from May 1971. Belmopan was opened 1st of August 1970. And I came kicking and screaming, actually. I was working in the Ministry of Natural Resources at the time, Lands and Survey in particular, and I was being transferred. I didn't want to come. Norris wanted to come. He was working with the Reporter Press at the time.
Okay.
But then he was offered a job as information officer with the information department. And I remember like 3 weeks later after moving to Belmopan, I said to him, you brought me this wilderness to punish me. Because it was hard. It was really, really difficult, you know.
Yes.
We were without so many things. But the story of Belmopan shows how people from the different areas of Belize came to Belmopan. They made sacrifices, but the commitment to make Belmopan a success was there. And it showed also in the church how committed they were to build this Roman Catholic Church in Belmopan alongside building the community of Belmopan. But it wasn't easy for people who came in the 70s.
Right.
So about the book, when we started the book, we started to interview people. As I said, they were a key part of the writing. And came along COVID. So we stopped. We used to invite people for a meal, or we would visit with them, have a sort of social gathering, and talk about the book. That alone was a challenge because people expected that we were coming to do the Inquisition, right? And we had to apply different type of interviewing technique.
The first thing they said, we don't know anything, you know, they were shy. People were shy.
So we had to introduce interviewing technique to try to bring them out. Talk about the children, talk about the family, talk about the chicken, talk about the garden.
Or put my cooking skills to use. Bring them for breakfast.
I think that's a perfect way to get somebody to open up. Just give them some
food.
food.
For dinner. Give them wine. And
wine, they might say a lot more than you expect.
And really, you talk about you referred So how did we put the book together? And as Sandra indicated, there was a national symbiosis as we work on it. After COVID, we tried to do interviews by telephone, but no interview on any telephone, no matter what techniques you use, is as good as an eyeball to eyeball interview.
COVID really slowed us down.
And we were really slowed down. But notwithstanding, the book consumed us. Before we went to bed, we talked about the book. We woke up in the morning, we spoke about the book. We had lunch, we spoke about the book. So it became a part of us.
There were so many rights and rewrites and rewrites. And no, Norris, you can't say this.
I'm a radical. I must admit, I'm a radical.
Yeah, but you know, Miss Sandra and Mr. Norris, I can definitely feel the involvement that you both had in the book. The way how you connected with everybody that contributed to making Living Faith in the Heartland what it is today. And I just want to say once more, thank you for that. It's a rich grab of history that you put out there, you know, talking about the refugees coming to Belmopan, how that shaped Belmopan, talking about education. All of those things is very critical to have an understanding of our country's development and a greater appreciation for Belmopan. I want to ask you.
I want to follow up on what you spoke about the refugee situation. The refugee situation is a very key component to the church and to the book, because without the church, the state could not have done its job in assimilating refugees into belief.
Father Lazarus Augustine had a lot to do with the refugee program.
The church could not have done what it did in working with the refugees without the support of the state. It was really a partnership between church and state. And without the Roman Catholic Church, I would say categorically, the refugee program would not have worked. It would have failed. And I think the Roman Catholic Church showed a lot of passion and humanitarianism in dealing with the Central American refugees coming to Belize, starting back in 79 and accelerating probably in the 80s.
You know what's important, Kevin and Renata, to say about Belmopan is that Belmopan reflects such a deep unity of our different ethnic groups and cultures that you don't see anywhere else in this country. Whereas we were raised as under the colonial masters, rule and divide, divide and rule, Belmopan brought the different ethnic and cultural groups together, and that still exists today.
It still
exists. Even
exists.
in our mass, in our mass, as we wrote in the book, that we have special days when a mass is said in all the languages.
Yeah.
And it's important to recognize this and to nurture people and not to disrespect their cultures.
Yes.
And this is what the Roman Catholic Church does. We respect every culture in Belize, but we as a people, as Belizeans in the end, we are different in how we prepare food, how we dance, and whatever else, our songs and so on. But in Belmopan, we are all one people.
Yes, that is true. I can attest to that. I definitely
Belmopan even
feel
think
it.
they're like this separated from Kyle
Belmopan is the whole
sometimes.
country,
Like that's a joke, a running joke that people have.
And
sometimes.
we are fiercely protective of Belmopan.
Yes.
We really, really are fiercely protective of Belmopan.
Yes.
I need to add something that is important here. This book is not about doctrine, nor is it about dogma.
Yeah.
It is about people and church and faith working in a community.
Definitely.
I would also certainly like to, I would be remiss if I did not give recognition to the ecumenical movement.
Yes.
And I spoke at length to Canon Flowers, who provided a lot of insights into the importance of the ecumenical movement in Belize. And were it not for the ecumenical movement, the Roman Catholic Church would not have been able to do what it has done or is doing in the country.
Yeah.
Because before Vatican II in the early 60s, the Roman Catholic Church was pretty much introverted. After Vatican Council II, the church was ordered to reach out to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this no doubt contributed considerably to the outreach of the Roman Catholic Church in meeting the needs of the oppressed and the depressed, and in working successfully with the communities in Belize.
Thank you for sharing that, Mr. Norris and Ms. Sandra. So unfortunately, we're running out of time on this conversation. I want to thank you both for giving us a walkthrough about from the initial process of compiling this book to like what it entails, what is the richness in it.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, can you share with us where can this book be purchased?
It is being sold at the office of the Our Lady of Guadalupe Cathedral here in Belmopan.
Okay.
They are the ones selling. And just to say that it was 50 years to celebrate the birth of the church in Belmopan and the birth of Belmopan. Okay.
Yes. Happy
So just-
50th to Belmopan.
Yay! And also, how much is the price? What is the price of the book?
$35. It was supposed to have been launched in 2020, but because of COVID, it was
Of course.
derailed. So it wasn't launched until last year. But Kevin, when you're in Belmopan, please come and
I will.
continue the conversation. Renata, you can come too.
Great. Thank you for
so
that
much.
invitation.
We
Thank
truly
you.
appreciate
Because you
the
don't
conversation.
seem to come to Belmopan very often.
I used to come. I used to Burgess Avenue. I used to grow up there with my grandmother, the Samuel.
I know your grandmother. I know your uncle. I know, yeah.
There you go.
You know them very well.
They're
Yes.
in Kamalote now, so it's a whole different thing. But thank you.
Well, stop
Thank
into
you.
Belmopan before you go to Kamalote.
Yes, and we'll try your food because apparently all the interviewees are getting the food. So I need to try it too. Maybe I open up in
It
a
makes
different
you talk,
way.
right?
Yes,
It
so
makes you talk.
And I love to cook. I love to cook. I'm an old-fashioned wife. I love to cook. I cook
Great.
every day.
we're looking
All right.
forward
So
to
Norris, Ms. Sandra, thank you so much for this conversation.
Okay, and
It was an absolute
thank
pleasure.
you both for having us. Okay,
Yes.
take care. Bye-bye.
And so with that, guys, we go to our next commercial break. When we're back, we're talking about San Ignacio, Santa Elena, Queen of the Bay candidate. We have the mayor in, the councilor in, and also some little festivities, stuff that's going to be happening. Stay tuned for the exciting conversation. We'll be right back.
And don't forget the giveaways.
Oh, and yes, giveaways. How can we forget the giveaways, guys?
Yep.
Stay tuned for all of that and so much more.